The sun had set, and a cool breeze echoed through the trees of the forest. Aditya was someone who enjoyed solitude, someone who found peace in being alone. One evening he decided that he wanted to spend a night in the wilderness, away from the noise of the city, so he packed his bag, filled with snacks, water, a flashlight, and even a pistol, because the forest could be dangerous, with wild animals sometimes lurking around, and set off on his motorcycle to a remote part of the forest. The place wasn't exactly a tourist attraction, but Aditya preferred it that way. He wanted complete silence, uninterrupted by people. As he rode deeper into the forest, the atmosphere started to feel different. It was too quiet. There was no chirping of birds, no rustling of the wind, just an eerie silence. Aditya tried to brush it off as his imagination, but something about the place unsettled him. He reached a clearing, decided to stop and set up camp. The quietness around him made him uneasy, but he focused on pitching his tent. Just as he started to feel a little better, he heard a faint scream in the distance. He paused, unsure if he had heard it correctly. He strained his ears, but the sound faded away. Aditya, maybe it's just some wild animal. But the forest was so still, so unnatural. As he continued setting up his camp, he heard something that sounded like footsteps approaching. His heart skipped a beat, but when he looked outside, there was no one there. Aditya started to feel uneasy. The air felt heavy and his senses were on high alert. He tried to tell himself it was just his mind playing tricks on him. Then his phone rang. It was an unknown number. When he answered, he heard nothing but heavy breathing on the other end. A cold shiver ran down his spine. "Aditya, who's there?" The voice on the other end whispered. "Voice, why are you all alone?" Aditya quickly ended the call, feeling his heart race. A few moments later, the phone rang again. He hesitated before answering, only to hear the same eerie whisper. "Voice, I'm right behind you." He froze. There was no one else in sight. He looked around, his mind racing. "Aditya, am I imagining things? Maybe it's just some prank." But then the sounds of footsteps started again. This time they were closer, as if someone or something was walking right outside his tent. Aditya's hands trembled as he reached for his flashlight, shining it outside, but there was no one there, only darkness. Suddenly there was another call, this time with a text message. With trembling hands, Aditya opened the message. It was a picture of his own tent, but what made his blood run cold was that the photo clearly showed a figure standing right outside, staring directly at the tent. His breathing became erratic and his fear grew more intense. He grabbed his pistol and rushed outside, shining his flashlight wildly in all directions. But the forest was still. No one was there. Then, just as he turned to head back inside, he caught a glimpse of something, a shadow, moving swiftly between the trees. It was far too fast to be a person, and far too strange to be anything normal. The shadow was human-like, yet not quite right. Aditya's pulse quickened. He could hear his breath now, each one louder than the last, as if he were trying to drown out the terror closing in around him. He backed up into the tent, shaking. His phone rang again, and the same voice echoed through the receiver. "You can't escape, I'm already here." Aditya quickly dropped the phone and grabbed his flashlight, scanning the area once more. Then the shadows started to take form. First just a glimpse, then a full silhouette standing at the edge of his campsite. The figure didn't move, only stared at him with hollow, glowing eyes. Aditya's blood ran cold as he tried to convince himself it was his imagination, but the figure didn't disappear. In a panic, Aditya rushed to grab his things and ran towards his motorcycle. His hands shook as he fumbled to start it, the engine roaring to life. He turned the bike around and sped down the dark path, the shadows chasing him, getting closer with each turn. But no matter how fast he rode, the feeling that something was watching him never went away. The road, the trees, everything around him seemed to close in. He was being followed. Aditya kept looking behind him, his heart pounding. Then he saw it, a dark figure standing at the edge of the forest, its eyes glowing in the dark. And just before he disappeared into the night, he heard the voice one last time, a cold whisper in the wind. "You can't run from me, I'm always with you." Aditya's mind was spinning. The rest of the ride felt like a blur. He reached the edge of the forest and saw the lights of the town ahead. But as he pulled into the town, he couldn't shake the feeling that the figure was still out there, waiting for him in the shadows. As he walked into his house, he checked his phone once more. The last message had been sent from that same unknown number. "Don't forget, I'll be waiting." This story is meant to send chills down your spine. I hope it keeps you up at night, wondering what's out there in the dark.